through a bit of a skills audit about what you can bring and how does that blend with the group of people that we've already got, and make sure that that feels right. But just wanted to mention that tonight as we look to strengthen our numbers. So we're back online. Sorry if we just dropped out for a bit there. So just for the benefit of the people online, I was just sharing that we've got our group of trustees split across finance, buildings, health and safety, safeguarding, personnel, HR, and this is them. So feel free to get in touch with us anytime if there's stuff that you want to talk about. And what you're going to do is, tonight you'll hear from a few of these people who will just take us through a bit of an update in terms of finance, HR, and then Adam will do his leadership report, and then at the end we'll have the panel of us here just to have that sort of question and answer session. So I am going to hand over to Simon, who's going to talk us through finance.
Thank you, Rob. Oh, thank you, Rob. Hopefully that's going to work. There we go. So for the finance update, I was going to quickly talk through the team, who they are, just so you know who the finance committee are. What we've done this year, a little bit about the 2020 accounts. I won't bore you with too many numbers, but I think it's important just to share where we ended 2020, look at where 2021 is at the moment, and then look ahead to 2022 as well. That's us, the finance committee. You should recognise us all, obviously, on the previous slide as well. And we've split our roles down so that we take on particular areas, really focusing on the individual skills that we've got, so that we're collectively not doing everything all the time, and really trying to share that work out. So we're blessed with having a broad skill set and some very beautiful people. So we're very lucky in that respect. What have we done this year? So I'm just going to move over here a little bit because I think it's a bit awkward to do. We've nominated budget holders. So we've set a full budget process for this current financial year. So looking at it from scratch, looking at what expenditure we think we're going to have, what expenditure we would like to have if we've got the money to do it, looking at all the different income streams we've got and setting a really detailed budget. And that was a huge piece of work to do. And we're running through that at the moment, and it's proving successful. There are things we'll do differently next year, but it's definitely proving a real success. We've given people delegated approvals. So from a finance perspective, signing off a certain level of expenditure. Why are we doing that? That might sound a little bit free and easy to some people, but actually that is to empower people to get on and run this organisation. And as I talk through this evening, and other people do as well, you'll realise the size and complexity of this organisation is probably different to how you might perceive it. And that delegated approval is an important part of that. We have an updated monthly dashboard, so we're able to monitor on a monthly basis accurately where our finances are, whether they're on budget, below budget, ahead of budget, and we can track any issues that come up. And where issues do present themselves, we have a detailed enough picture to be able to manage our way through it, which is important to do. We employ 40 people. I imagine a lot of you in the audience and online wouldn't realise that we employ that number of people, but we do. We're a complex organisation. If you compare that to the old creamery, they only employ 25 people. So you think about the size of organisation we are now, that is complex. I am going to name drop John Pocock because the operational management of our finances would not be possible without having John doing that. Do not underestimate what a mountain that is to climb on a daily basis, probably an hourly basis, sometimes a minute-by-minute basis. I'll touch on that a bit later on, but a personal thanks to John for everything he does. From a trustee's perspective, it allows us to provide governance and oversight rather than tactical and operational action, which is great for us. Just very quickly on the 2020 accounts, I'll just read through those. Total incomes, 916,000. That is across the organisation. So that's not just YCC, that's Y4F and the various other elements as well. Turnover is over £500,000, so we're deemed a large charity now. So there are other associated requirements that we have to adhere to when it comes to financial reporting. Total expenditure was just under £650,000. We've increased our reserves from 2019 up to over 1.2 million, but a lot of that, about £330,000, is restricted. And at the end of that year, cash at bank, so cash in hand, if you like, was about £344,000. So we're in a strong financial position. I'll touch on a little bit how we get to those numbers in the round. But suffice to say, 2020, bearing in mind what was going on in the world, was a positive year financially for us. 2021 so far, income 826,000, but our main expenditure at the moment, sitting around about £420,000, is on salaries. As I said, we employ 40 people, and you can see where that income comes from. You know, almost a 50-50 split, YCC and Y4F, and then there's a crate and coffee shop as well. But what I think is important to note there is whilst we split out Y4F and YCC, Y4F funds YCC at the same time. So there are the management charge, there are other elements of money that come for Y4F to YCC to allow us to do what we need to do. So I think it's important that we report them separately, but it's also vital to understand that they are interconnected, and YCC is the beneficiary financially of doing that. How do you know that? That's incredible. Apparently I'm back on camera now. Yeovil for family. That is right, isn't it? You really made me down myself then. You should know that though. Yeah. Okay. I've lost my thought now. Yeah, so we're a 1 million turnover business with 40 staff on payroll, and that takes a huge amount of management, not just at an oversight level, but on that low level coal-face engagement as well. And currently, where we're looking on the financial year 21 is we'll outturn with a surplus at the end of the year. Now, the obvious question is, what do we do with that surplus? Well, we'll be looking to build ourselves an operational reserve is one of the areas we're looking at, but also where we can invest that back into the organisation as well. And I'll touch on that reserve in a minute. So that is supposed to blow your mind, because it blew my mind when I saw it as well. Suffice to say, all I want you to take away from that is it is a complex organisation when it comes to finances. It's not a question of money comes in, we spend it on the church, and that's it. It comes in different ways, it goes out in different ways, money moves from one part of the organisation to the other, quite legitimately, and it's good accounting practice and good financial management to do that, but it's just to make the point that it is complex. If anybody wants to stay behind afterwards, I'm more than happy to talk you through it if you want to, but I won't be offended if nobody does. And then looking ahead to 2022, what does that look like? So we've done our first budget proper this year from the bottom up. We're going to do that in a slightly different way. We've started that 2022 budget process already, and we're going to look to make that a bit more efficient and effective, more so for us from a management perspective, because we've learned a lot in the last year. We want to focus on increased giving. Giving is in a good position. It is up on where it was 2018, 2019. At the moment, we're broadly tracking where we were 2020. A few peaks and troughs of difference, but generally in a good position. But that's an important part of our income. Yes, we get good income from Y4F, but our giving income is vital to allow us, YCC, the church, if you want to bracket it like that, to do what we need to do. And the majority of what the church does is funded by giving. The Y4F money we get in is a useful top-up, but the majority is by giving, so that is why that's so important. We are going to build an operational reserve. So the size of charity we are now, we have to have a designated reserve policy. And the policy that we're proposing to put forward is that we generate an operational reserve that gives us 3 months resilience, i.e. if all of our funding, giving, everything dried up tomorrow, how long could we continue to run the organisation for whilst we try and manage our way through that? And our aim is to strive for 3 months. So I touched earlier on what we might do with any surplus at the end of the year is we'll probably give that operational reserve a bit of a kickstart so that we've got that ready if we ever needed to do that. And that's important to do because we're a large employer. Huge elements of the community rely on what we do. So I think it's important and beholden upon us socially, if nothing else, to be able to continue to deliver that service if things dried up. There's no anticipation that it will, but I think it's a prudent way to manage our finances. And my last bullet really is, keep praying for our funding. I've put Y4F in there particularly. Obviously, SSDC will be no more in about a year, 18 months' time. We're moving to unitary council. No one's really sure what that looks like. No one's really sure how that funding's going to work. And that is happening at the exact time that our current Y4F contract runs out. So prayer for that would be very much appreciated. Prayer in the round for finances, but I think particularly about that. We're having conversations already with what the future Unitary Council looks like, how they're going to do that. But obviously we don't know what they're going to want to do, so prayer for that would be greatly appreciated. I think that's it for finance. Thank you.
Evening, everybody. So I've been involved with trustees, I think, for about 18 months, a couple of years, but just recently taken over as chair of the personnel committee. Before I took over, Ian Bramley was in place, and I'd just like to thank Ian for all his hard work in the committee, particularly when he's handling things during the pandemic, when things were happening on a weekly basis and changing day by day, and we had furlough and everything else, so just thank him for his contribution. So Simon sort of already touched on it, but really one of the points to discuss this evening is about the growth in numbers employed. So in October 20, so a year ago, we were at around 28 employees, and now we're around 38, 40 employees, and about to recruit another couple of people as well. So it's quite a change in the organisation. Plus also, the yellow you can see there is Y4F. So you can see how over that time period that Y4F has become more than 50% of the people that we employ. I think also a point that Simon did touch on earlier is that out of those 38, 40 employees, there are only about 7 that are actually employed on a full-time basis, if you take that as being 37.5 hours a week. Most people are employed on 30 hours or less per week, so it's something to bear in mind when looking at those figures. So this slide just shows how things have changed over the past 4 years. So you can see really there that virtually all the growth in employees has been through Y4F. Apart from some minor changes, everything has been through Y4F. I think another point to mention is obviously we have 40 employees, but as a church we actually have around up to 150 volunteers. And obviously there's many different aspects of volunteering here, either youth work, could be we have volunteer mentors in Y4F, we have people involved in the car park for when it's vaccinations, and all these people need to be managed by people in the employed staff, and particularly the strategic lead team who are responsible for those people ultimately on a day-to-day basis. In Y4F in particular, at the moment there is 25 going on 31 volunteers, but we're just about to ramp up to over 100. So there's quite a large then organisation. If you include the volunteers, then we're over 200 people. I think also within those volunteers, we have a requirement to look after the volunteers in terms of health and safety, and also in terms of safeguarding, depending where they're volunteering, and we provide training for that as well. And training and development is obviously a key part of personnel and HR and how we look after our employees. I think Simon's already mentioned about John Pocock, and I'll mention him as well. So there has been a shift in how we operate as trustees with the operational team. So maybe 12, 18 months ago, the trustees were getting very heavily involved day to day in the operational side of either finance or personnel. But since John and also Dion Honey, who's the programme lead for Y4F, have become involved, then now actually a lot of the day-to-day activities for those functions is now done by the operational team, and the trustees are more involved in looking at procedures and policies and managing the day-to-day. So there's also an increased requirement for reporting from the operational team so that trustees can keep informed about things on a day-to-day basis. So in terms of recruitment, in the past 12 months that we obviously appointed a pastoral strategic lead, we have appointed a chaplain, and we've also replaced the homeless link worker who was Miles but now to Bridget Turner. And also 9 link workers have also been recruited in that time period. We're currently recruiting for a buildings and facilities manager, an executive assistant, and we've got a new programme just about to start for Afghan refugees. I suppose similar to the one we did a number of years ago for Syrian refugees, and we'll be further recruiting for another 1 or 2 people for those roles. And just, I think we touched on furlough earlier on, but obviously furlough came to an end at the end of September, but through that process we were able to retain all our staff, and nobody was lost through the pandemic. So in terms of prayer, clearly as a church organisation, we really do need to pray for spiritual protection for our employees and also our volunteers. And also we need to pray for the areas of wisdom and guidance in terms of just managing change, because obviously the church is going through quite a rapid expansion, and also the shift in changing from the trustees being more day-to-day involved to it being more operationally driven is quite a big change for the operational team to undertake. So prayers in that area would also be good as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm here to give a bit of a leadership report, and I want to try and frame a little bit of the journey we've been on, because it's been quite a year. It's been quite 18 months. It's I'll grab it. Is that better? That's easier, isn't it? All right, Dan. They're happy up there. So I think we've done that one. Can you go to the other PowerPoint slide, Joe? The presentation. It's coming. Here we go. Yeah. I want to talk about new beginnings, because we find ourselves in this position. But I want to take you back a little bit to remember, what was God saying to us 2 years ago and 3 years ago? Because if you remember, it feels like a long time ago, right? I mean, COVID time just seems to have messed with all sorts of time in our heads. But if you think back, we were in this room, walking around with this sense of like walking around the walls of Jericho. We had this sense that God was saying, what got you to this point isn't what's going to get you through what's coming. That there was this sense There was a sense that we were kind of standing in the rubble, and everything was changing, and there was a lot of rebuilding and rethinking to be done. There was a new posture required. We were coming into a new normal. We had this sense that we were going to be going through transition, that there was a sense that renewal and revival was kind of imminent, and we were going to see a huge amount of growth, and we needed to prepare for that. Familiar to anyone to remember this? And it was quite exciting, but also we have no idea what this is going to look like. And there's probably a good reason for that. We had this sense that there was going to be more people, and we were going to see more miracles, and there was going to be more signs of the kingdom and more connections into the community and thousands of people coming through the doors. And here we are at this point, and we've seen growth in prayer, and we've seen more people. I don't know, isn't it weird coming in on a Sunday morning for all the I think most people here are people who have been here quite a long time, and then we've kind of been stuck at home and watching online and engaging online, and then we walk back in the building and we look around and we kind of go, we're back, and I don't recognise anybody. Like, it's all new people, and it feels like a new church plant with 100-year history, and we're kind of in this weird dynamic of just going, this is weird. Like, everything feels new and everything feels different, and it's a little disconcerting and it's a little unsettling. But here we are, there's more people and we've seen growth and development in our youth work, in our children's work. Yeovil for Family has grown significantly, as we've seen, by about 300% in the number of families it's supporting at any one time. We've seen a shift and growth in our homeless work. We've already talked about the growth in employees. We've seen more small groups developing very recently. We've seen a dramatic change in the use of the Gateway, and where the vaccination centre and the blood donor centre and the food bank now takes over a huge part of the building. And everything has shifted, everything has grown, and our connection into our community and our connection into our neighbourhoods individually has shifted over the last year and a half. Like, we've seen this growth, and you might look at that and go, well, is that what God was talking about when he was talking about thousands of people coming through and growth and more? And I think maybe, but I think it's just the beginning of it. I think we've been through a long kind of 18 months of disruption and change, and I think we are seeing some signs of maybe what God was talking about, but I think this is the beginning, and I think there's more to come. So how have we been navigating, and how do we navigate this next section? And that's what I wanted to talk about, this first steps. I want to talk about resetting, I wanted to talk about restructuring, I wanted to talk about reinforcing, and then reimagining. So we'll jump through these. So resetting, it's not by accident that we've been looking at our 365, our mission and our vision and our values for almost a year now. And we're coming to the end. I promise you, we're coming to the end, and then we'll move on to something else in January. But we're getting there. But it's not by mistake that we've been looking at that. Our 365, why are we here? Who are we called to be? What are we called to do? Are our key questions as a church. And how we do that is shifting. So why are we here? Living out faith, hope, and love in our community. That is fairly consistent. That's long term. Who are we called to be? Our values are fairly consistent. But what are we called to do? That kind of changes and evolves. And so we've been looking at that, and I think that's really important. But we're also now having to kind of reset. Well, what does it mean for us to be Yeovil Community Church? What does it mean for us to be family together? Because as we're emerging from our lockdown and our little bubbles and whatever, what does this look like? How do we reset what it means to be family? How do we, for what it means for us to be Yeovil Community Church? How do we refocus now on how we move forward? So it feels like we're doing a bit of a reset on Sunday mornings with a bit of YCC 101 going on, where we're talking about our values and who we are and who our leaders are and what our worship is about, and we're trying to cover a lot of our basics and do a bit of a reset. At the same time, we've been doing a restructure. You've heard about how the trustees have been able to restructure through the pandemic. Our leadership team, we have a new leadership team that has been restructured during the pandemic, and we've managed to recruit a strategy team, again, during a pandemic. That is no small feat for us to have achieved. It has been a lot of work. But we have managed to restructure and reposition ourselves. And the strategy team, the leadership team is there, and these are all the beautiful people on the leadership team, and there's a bit of a shift there. Some of the old faces, but also new faces coming in, and that's been really exciting. And the development of our strategy team, this is the team that is here day to day, making this stuff happen, but holding the strategic responsibility for how this happens. So I look after the team and the oversight of it all. Rachel is our community strategic lead, not just about Yeovil for Family, but our homeless work. She's involved in conversations with health and with mental health and with the council and with police and all sorts of organisations about how can we work collaboratively with all these organisations to improve our community, and he's doing some amazing work there. We've brought John in as everybody loves John. I was telling him today that a day is going to come when he's going to start annoying people, but he'll be fine. We're not there yet. Everyone still loves John. But John's coming as our operations lead to help us manage this shift, really, because previously our trustees were doing a lot as volunteers, and this size organisation, that just isn't sustainable anymore. And so actually that needed to be an operational level of finance and of personnel, which John is responsible for and doing a great job. Joe has kind of expanded from just being create and worship to looking after our whole creative strategic, our whole creative strategy. And so the whole shift online during our pandemic and all the development of that stuff has been managed by Joe. And that we had to do a lot of learning very quickly to make that shift and to make that adjustment, and has done an amazing job looking at that. And now we've been able to bring in Lisa as our pastoral strategic lead. Again, it's been really important. Right before the pandemic, Alan Partington stepped away, he retired. And we needed a bit of time to understand what that role was going to be, what did we need to replace it with. And anyway, we've got to the point now where we have that strategic pastoral lead, because we think that's really important. I'll explain why in a minute. But also we have the chaplaincy role we're stepping Keith into, which is also really important. So we have restructured. And then we're also reinforcing. You will have noticed, if you're paying attention on a Sunday morning, that we talk a lot more about being a Jesus-centered church. We are talking a lot more in our language about Jesus being front and center in who we are and what we're about and how we're church, that we're this church where Jesus is fundamentally at the center of what we're about, and then people are drawn towards that center wherever they are and wherever we connect with them. It's really important for us. We feel at this time we've done a lot of growth, we do a lot of stuff in the community, and that has grown, as you've seen. But we actually feel that the strategic shift for us at the moment is to reinforce our core, is to reinforce our centre. What does it mean for us to be a church? Let's focus on what it means for Jesus to be at the centre. Let's focus on our pastoral support, which is why we've made these appointments of pastoral strategic lead and chaplain role, because we think the pastoral care is really important. We think our small groups are really important. We want to invest in them, and how we do discipleship is important. So we want to invest in that, because actually we can, if we weren't doing this, I think we'd start tippling over as an organisation, because everything would be outward and we'd kind of be this small centre at the beginning and we'd be tippling over. So we felt it was really strategically important to reinforce our core. That's why we've made the shift for the strategy team, to make sure that we're operationally stronger. That's why we focus on the pastoral roles. That's why we're focusing on small groups. That's why we're revisiting our values. We want to make sure that our core is strengthened, and that's a key strategic focus for us at the moment, to reinforce the essence, the core of what it means to be Yeovil Community Church. All of that, so that's what we've been doing, that's what we're in the process of doing, that's what we're going to be doing, but also we can reimagine, because we're standing at this point as we're emerging. Is that the right word? From the pandemic? Who knows? Who knows where we're at in this cycle of a pandemic? But let's say we're emerging, and let's just work with that language for now. As we're emerging from this pandemic, we're not going back to normal, because that's gone, but we're emerging into a new normal. What does it mean, again, to be Yeovil Community Church? And we have to do some reimagining. We have to do some reimagining around the building. That's the conversation we were already having, because we saw that we were outgrowing the building. Well, the pandemic was a catalyst for a lot of things, and now we've really outgrown the building. And I'm not just talking about the community work, but that is part of that. The Lord's Larder is a lot bigger, our families work is a lot bigger. We have outgrown the building in many ways, but we've outgrown the building as a church family on a Sunday. Whilst we might currently fit in here, but who knows when everyone starts gathering back on a Sunday. But our children's work and our youth work doesn't really fit at the same time. That's all a bit squeezed, because we don't have the same space that we had. And even if we had the same space that we had, we'd still be squeezed, but we have less space than we had. So we're really squeezed on that. So we don't really fit in the building, and there's an opportunity for us to reimagine what does that look like moving forward at the next phase. And we're going to be doing a little bit of that as leaders and trustees. In November, we're having a day together to explore some different options. We're hopefully bringing that to you in the new year with some ideas, so we can get that conversation going as a church. We need to imagine reimagine church community. What does it mean for us to work out community together as people who attend on a Sunday or people who watch online? What does it look like for us to be community? And I think we need to do some investing in spending time together again, in eating together or having fun together or worshipping together or gathering together and being together. I think we need to do some reimagining and some rethinking and some investing in that. And then we can reimagine our community engagement, because our community has changed. So what are the needs? And not just in our macro community, but also just in our neighbourhoods. And how do we enable all of you to do the things that you feel you want to do with your neighbours and in your neighbourhoods? So there's some reimagining for us to do as we move forward, exploring what the new normal looks like, exploring what it means for us to live this out and work this out. And we want all of us to be part of that conversation. We're not sat here as a leadership team or trustees or strategy team with all the ideas. We're working hard. We're trying to make sense of it. We're trying to listen to what God's saying, and we're trying to respond to his prompts and all that sort of stuff. And on the whole, it feels like we've navigated the last 18 months okay, but how we respond and react to this situation that we're in now, I think, is really an exciting opportunity for us as we move forward into the next year. So we go again. We get to go again. You know, I think it might be that you were involved in particular areas before, and you've come to a point, and I think a lot of people come to a point where they go, well, I've volunteered, I helped out in that area for ages, and I don't feel like I need to get back involved in that. I feel like I'm done with that now. And that's great. That's absolutely great. We have no issue with that at all. All of us are trying to understand what it looks like to be at this new moment in time. But as a church, I think it's really important together that collectively we figure out, we go again with praying and we invest more. You know, it's so exciting to see our morning and afternoon, morning and lunchtime prayer meetings every day of the week, gathering together, praying together. To have that rhythm of prayer in the church has been really exciting. But we go again, and it would be great to see more people engaging in that and more time of prayers. We go again with Sundays and reimagining what our Sundays can look like, and as a space where we can see Jesus, encounter Jesus, worship Jesus, and see him wholeheartedly worshipped and deeply experienced and clearly known is really exciting for us. So we can go again with our Sundays and how we want people to engage in Sundays and help shape those. We go again with volunteering and all the different opportunities. And it might be that you've always done something, you go, I'm not doing that again, and that's great. But it might be there's something else that we can get involved in, or another need that we see. We go again with giving, and I cannot say what a blessing it's been, how faithful this church has been through the pandemic. I chat to so many church leaders who've seen giving half or even, drop further. I've chatted to so many people and so many churches who've really struggled, and that there's a faithfulness to ICC which we need to celebrate and thank you for and recognise and honour. And as new people come and join this church and gather with us and shape us and worship with us and bring who they are amongst us, we want to see how we give change. We want to see how we volunteer change, and we want to invest in that connecting and getting to know each other and getting to rebuild those relationships and rebuild those connections as a church. So let me encourage you to let me thank you for the journey to this point, and let me encourage you that this is just the beginning of what God is doing, and we get to go again. Thank you. I think we're going to go to Q&A, Rob.
Thank you very much.
I'll put you along.
I know there's quite a number of people who are online. Hello, thanks for joining us. So could you please join the yeovil.cc/join in chat, and then you can post all your questions in there. So yeah, it'd be great to hear from you and see that chat coming through. Equally, I'm going to ask the guys who presented, but also we've got most of the trustees here, so it may well be that we'll ask Rosie or Lydia or Karen or Keith to jump up as well and just answer any questions that come through. So, either, Rosie, you're going to keep an eye on the chat as well for us, aren't you? Thank you. Any questions in the room? Hello, Di.
I'll come to you.
It's a question for all the leaders, really, and the trustees. In all of that, which is fabulous, and I've really enjoyed the update, there has not been a mention that went outside of the UK. And I mean, that's absolutely understandable, because for 18 months nobody's been going anywhere. But I'm aware that it's part of our articles. It's our second mission statement on the Charity Commission website that says that we are committed to spreading the Christian faith across the world. And I'm also aware that some of those restricted funds that were mentioned earlier are specifically ring-fenced for overseas. So I just wondered where in our new strategy team might sit the leader who's going to carry the torch for that.
Great, thank you, Diane. So yeah, I mean, it has fallen off the radar a little bit for obvious reasons over the last 18 months, but it's absolutely part of who we are. The key nations really that we were involved in pre-pandemic were Spain, France, Brazil, India were the probably the main relationships we had. I think there's no reason to think that those won't continue to be the main, but at the same time, we want to reimagine. So I think it would be helpful for us, we need to look at where is their life, where are those relationships at. I think we need to go and reconnect in all those areas and have conversations and see what's changed for them, the same as what's changed for us. Where is the need now, and where is where can we be a blessing? So I think we need to do some of that. And if there are other links emerging as we emerge, then we really want to hear about those too. As where it sits, it probably sits with me at the moment, because I look around the strategy team and they're all busy, and I'm the least busy of all of them. So it probably sits with me at the moment. But but I'm very happy to have that conversation. And if you're particularly interested in Spain, let's have that conversation and let's figure out how to connect that. And it is something we need to start, again, as we emerge, just start breathing some oxygen onto to see those embers flare up again. Yeah, so once we understand what countries are the ones that are emerging, then it might be that different leaders within the team pick different nations rather than one person being responsible for all of them. Steph, we need a microphone at the back, don't we? I'll go again. I'm the roving reporter tonight.
With the lovely Keith's new job, are YCC as a family, as a church, going to know, in detail what Keith's role is going to be, so we know whether, I don't know, somebody needs to be baptised or somebody's died, and is he going to be doing funerals, and what access do we have? Is that going to be kind of fed out in great detail so that we don't bombard him with all the things he shouldn't be doing?
That's a great question. Yeah, please don't bombard Keith with all the things he shouldn't be doing. So, pastoral stuff initially will come to Lisa as strategic pastoral lead, and then Lisa will decide which things are for Keith to deliver or someone else in the team to deliver, or link him with a small group, etc. So Keith's time is going to be spent here in the building for people who are in and about, for the staff team, because like we've heard, we've got a large staff team now, so Keith's mornings generally will be spent around the building for staff team and for people who are in and out of the building. And then we're putting together a program for him, which will probably be more like afternoons, but that can be visiting people, or that can be visiting some care homes or different contexts, and administering things like communion in different contexts, and for people who can't access that elsewhere. So it's that very, Keith's role is that very sort of on the ground, person to person contact. If it's the larger stuff, pretty much all the stuff you referenced, that would go to Lisa initially, and then Lisa will decide whether that fits within Keith's schedule or whether that fits somewhere else in the team.
I think I'd also make the broader point, which would be it's critically important, and I guess since Alan retiring, it's maybe been a bit of a gap. And also I think what we found is that, for the last 18 months, while we've also been in maybe certain silos and whatever, yet the outreach, the Jesus on the street stuff continues, it doesn't mean that we're any less church. We're both. And I think we have lots of conversations as leaders and trustees around, are we a church or are we a social enterprise, or whatever words we might choose around whatever social enterprise means. And the answer is we're both, because we're a fantastic church who do a lot to see Jesus on the streets, but we also know that we need to be both. And at times, the pendulum probably swings one way or another. I can't put a percentage on you. The ideal would on it for you. The ideal would be that it's 50-50, and it varies, but I think we're acutely aware of it, and therefore with those roles coming in, that's absolutely something that we want to make sure that is all really clear, that we improve all the communication around that we improve all the access around that, and just really listen to that feedback that I think I've heard as well. So
Welcome, I'm on my way.
you're getting your steps up, Adam.
I am. This is fabulous.
I'm just very conscious looking around the room here that, if, for want of a better expression, it's mainly the older faithful. I see Jan and Joe there, Joe and Dan there, which is great. And that's no criticism, and it's great to hear all the exciting things that are happening. I'm trying to link that with the fact that yesterday, I was quite shocked to hear there's only 4 people involved in the children's church. So we've obviously got a need to recruit new volunteers, and particularly from some of the newer people who are not represented here. My question is, how are we going to do that?
Shall I? Malcolm, I didn't plant that question, but what a fabulous question, and I have an answer. So you're absolutely right. I think actually there's 6 volunteers on our children's work team, but that's still massively short of where we need to be. That was probably my miscommunication, because there were 4 on that particular day rather than as in entirety. But we are going to make November our volunteering month, and we're going to spend the month of November profiling and prioritising all sorts of different opportunities for us to increase volunteers, because we would love to be having coffee and tea served and whatever on a Sunday. I think we're at that point now. There's no reason for us not to do that, except we don't actually have the volunteers to do that at the moment. And, we could go back to all the volunteers who did it previously, but actually most of them, quite rightly, are gone, I did that for a decade. I'm probably done. It's not someone else's turn now, and it's someone else's turn now. So we need to, we're going to try and make that space and make that opportunity for everyone to do a bit of a rethink of, what do I bring? What can I be involved in? Where can I be involved? There is any number. And Malcolm, if you fancy helping out with the cameras on a Sunday, you're welcome to get involved with that, or whatever it might be. So, I think...
And we also had 90 people at the newcomers' lunch week last Sunday. So I think that's amazing, but we've got to get to know them. We've got to understand, what are their skills? What do they want to do? They've got to get to know us. So
that's right.
Hopefully that will, things like the newcomers' lunch help to kick that off.
Yeah. We're in a huge state of flux of transition. And volunteering is just one of those areas where we're in this massive flux. And so we're trying to hold back on, let's not push too many things too soon. But at the same time, we're going to make a big focus of it in November, and hopefully over the next 2 or 3 months, we'll see people figuring out where they fit, where they position themselves. And yes, there's people in the room, but we don't know who's online.
I'm going to ask Karen to join us, because we've had a question on the live chat, and then I'll come to you, Tim, around environmental and what we're doing to reduce our environmental impact. Karen, so much to say.
Well, yes. Obviously, we have a policy, which is helpful. And we have a action plan, because there's a lot of things that we need to change. And we have a carbon neutral action plan, which has a very ambitious task of trying to reduce a carbon footprint to be neutral in 10 years, which will probably be hard to achieve, but it's something we want to work towards. So we're doing some things already, and there's I think we've got a slide which shows our carbon footprint from 2019 and 2020. Partly it's just useful for you to see where most of our emissions come from. And so obviously our energy is 40%, so that's quite a lot. And we are in a fixed contract at the moment that ends in May, and we'll definitely be looking at a greener energy companies going forward, though with how everything's going, with our gas and gas at the moment, we'll see. So, but that's what we're working towards. That's one of our actions. I mean, it's interesting that 2 flights was the equivalent of all the mileage in that year. That shows the other side of the issue of the flights and the impact on our CO2. And obviously purchases, which were obviously less for 2020 just because of COVID and lockdown. But it is something that we are trying to do, like we're replacing lighting with LED. When things go, we might have to fast track that. We've done lots of things like, because the things that we think about is like water. If I just think about some of the things that we are thinking about. So we've dual flush buttons fitted to the toilets, a lot more online meetings to avoid unnecessary travel, reducing the use of single-use cups. Hence, I was encouraging you to bring your own cups. And then we've also had used mugs, which we can wash. What else? Paper and printing's reduced, as we're using more email and online forms and registrations, reducing the number of fridges and freezers, and installing timers and water heaters, reducing the use of heaters. Unfortunately, we have parts of the building that aren't insulated at all, which obviously part of the building development that will change, and that will make a big difference as well. What else? Checking the lights and equipment are turned off, purchasing more environmentally friendly white goods. We did that when we set up the YFRF office, so the white goods there were, that was the consideration, and that's what we're trying to do more. And obviously the plan to improve insulation and everything else is part of our building development. So there are things that we're working on, and we'd love people to come and join in and help us. And I know that's very much building based, because obviously that's where most of our CO2 comes from. But we're also aware that actually, as a church, we need to be helping each other to be more environmentally aware, in our own homes and lifestyles. So that is another area that we need to work on. Just, to give people ideas. Maybe just don't know where to start with it. We want to try and help increase the people involved in our environmental working groups, so that we can try and have people who can help contribute to that. Have an environmental champion. Environmental champions would be great. We have agreed that we will have an environmental fund and we're going to have it part of the budget for 2022, so that there is funds set aside to try and improve our carbon footprint and also to raise awareness, and which other people could come and join in. Like if we do have a flight, that the offset will be added to that fund. So there's lots of things we are working on. If you want to know, you're very welcome. I can, show you our action plans so you can see the kind of things that we're thinking about, and come and join in. It'll be wonderful.
Thanks, Karen. It's really, really helpful. I think we also do make sure that in every trustee meeting as well, at the end, we talk about what decisions we've made and whether those are an environmental improvement on what we had before. So we also just have that check of just ask that simple question and make sure that we're making the right decisions. So, Tim, I think you had a question.
I'm on my way, Tim.
You never need to apologise for an aggressive carbon net zero policy. More aggressive would be lovely. My question was really It's a charity and a strategic question. It's been amazing tonight to hear just how much Y4F is growing, the direction it's going, how really from the foundations that was set, that it's building on that, and I assume growing strategically over the coming years. As trustees, how have you sat with that and how it sits with us now as a large charity, and Y4F being part of YCC as a large charity, and have you had strategic thoughts that you can share as to whether you see that as a continuing situation over the next year, 3 years, 5 years, or whether there's a different strategic charitable direction? Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Yeah, in simple terms, are you going to split Y4F out? And if not, why not? And I don't know the answer.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and the simple question is, are we going to split out Y4F? Do you want to?
I can answer a little bit. When we first established Y4F, this was something we thought about and prayed about a lot, and we felt very clearly at that point that God, counterintuitively, was saying it should be part of YCC, which didn't make sense because we thought that would be a huge barrier to funding, and it has been a barrier to some funding. Actually, as funding shifts, it's now opening up funding for us that wouldn't be available to us if we weren't a church, which is interesting, and we've been helpful. We've been able to change the narrative, I guess, and certainly locally, I think it's had a big impact that it's a church delivering this work. However, I think it's something that we will continue to keep under review, because there may well be a point when that aspect becomes of a size that actually the strategic best thing to do is to separate it off. But I think it's something we need to keep under review. We do talk about it from time to time, but at the moment there isn't a plan to shift that in the next year or so. But I think it's something we'll continue to keep under review because, there are all sorts of opportunities for growth. If they all came off, then we'd probably set up a whole separate thing over here. But I don't necessarily think they'll all come off. Anything you want to add to that? Does that answer?
No, I think for me the interesting bit is where you can, yes, by keeping it together is the extra funding that you're able to apply for, which then means if you separate it, then it's a whole different model to what we've got now that might need more resources, might need more. So I think it's a big one that we'll keep talking about.
I think Rachel wants to add something. I guess the other factor is there's a whole bunch of funding that we currently apply for that we wouldn't be allowed to apply for if we were a new organisation.
Sorry, very quickly, I would just say in terms of Yeovil Family, I think we're still at the stage with Yeovil Family where it's the spiritual covering that being part of a church trust or church CIO affords Y4F is really important and really powerful because, we're going into really dark places sometimes. We're going into difficult circumstances and the spiritual covering of church over that is really important. And there's something really powerful and courageous to say, we started it under the church trust and it's still in that place. That's actually a really powerful witness, both to secular organisations and to other churches, to have the courage to start things. So,
I think the other thing just one final thing on that I would say about it is, I wonder if one of the reasons why that's where God steered us. I've seen a lot of churches set up separate trusts for social action, and 10 years on or 15 years on, the faith element has been minimised to such an extent that you wouldn't be able to discern it from any other non-faith organisation. And I think the fact that to this point this has been part of YCC helps us keep Jesus at the centre and keep that focus. But again, it will present some problems at some point if it keeps growing the way it's growing.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions coming in. So there's one about talking through a little bit more about the proposed building work that we're looking at. So I'll give you a moment to think about.
What's the question?
just saying. Yeah, the proposed
Okay.
building project.
So I can give you a general overview. So we've been looking at various ideas for a while. During the pandemic, we've been able to have conversations with different partners, whether that be agencies and etc. We've gone to the architects with some rough ideas, which they've been able to flesh out for us. We have now brought that back and had an initial conversation with the strategy team where we've kind of gone, well, these are three main or three initial options that we want to explore. We've got a meeting with the architects tomorrow where we're going to carry that conversation on, all in preparation for a Leaders and Trustees Day in November, when we're going to look at those various options and try and understand, do any of them really fit the problems we're trying to solve? Do any of them feel like the best way forward for us? What questions, what work needs to be done on that? And then we're hoping, having done that work, we'll be able to bring that to the church early. I'd love by the prayer week in February to have brought that to the church with this is what we think. This is our best guess at the moment. What do you think? So then we can engage as many of the church in that conversation as possible. So we're not going to come with this is it, it's gone, look at all the plans, it's done, and that's all you need to do is give this much money and we'll sort it. What we're trying to do is come with and we might come with 2 or 3 options and go, here's some options, what do we all think? And what feedback and what ideas, what does this solve, what does this not solve for us, what are we missing? So we want it very much to be a conversation where we reimagine together, but we're trying to get some of those what's possible steps done first, so we've got something to talk about in the new year.
Thanks, Adam. There's also been a really good suggestion on the chat around having some camera-free zones on a Sunday morning. It's brilliant that we have cameras and we can live stream and everyone can access. There might also be some people here who don't particularly want to be on camera, so how do we make that happen and make that possible? I think that's a really, really good suggestion, so that's something that we will take forward and talk about. So thank you very much for that. We have a question from Sarah.
Just on that, what you were just saying, I've had a couple of people say to me that they've had words on Sunday morning, but they weren't going to go and share them with anybody because they didn't want to be on camera. Have we thought about what might happen in those kind of instances?
Yes, Diane, because that's a very good question, Sarah, and
People who are here in the room will know that I do have words and pictures for people sometimes. And it's actually devastatingly simple, and it's something we already do, which is just you go and talk to the person who's leading it, you share the word, and then they share it for you on camera. It's a solution we already use. So always have the confidence to go and tell the person who's hosting the service, and also to say, and I don't want to say it. It's quite simple.
Yeah, it is worth saying we're not going to pressure anyone onto camera. So if you have a word and you want to bring that, you can bring that to the host or one of the leaders. And if you really don't, that's fine. We will make sure that gets shared with people the best way on that morning.
Okay. Any other questions? Has there anything else come through the chat, Rosie? Or are we...
I just have a comment on that one. I think since we've all been being back in the room, we forget that there's still a congregation online, and it's an inclusive thing on both sides. So what we try and do is plan a service that still meets a congregation in the room and online. So some of the challenge with that is absolutely in the room how we enable it to be a safe space for people, but we also then make something exclusive only to people in the room. That's the challenge.
Yeah, so for those on camera, so we can include, Joe was saying it's really important that we include those on camera. So, yeah, and it is really important that we find that balance. And look, the whole transition of the tech side and online and whatever, we had to jump really quickly with very little planning, knowledge what we were doing, or anything into going online, and then 1 week later into from people's homes, and then back to in the building. And actually all of that was easier than what we currently do, which is online and in the building, which is a nightmare. But It's what we feel we need to do, and we need to do it well. So please don't think you're being critical if you bring points like that to us. Like, we need to hear how we make this work. You know, there are no training courses in this. There are no people that we can go to go, please show us how to do this. Like, we're chatting to other churches, and we're seeing what they're doing, but actually, on the whole, we're doing okay. But we need to learn. And again, please come with your questions and your comments and your ideas, because we need to figure this out together to see what works for everyone.
Sorry, I was just going to say that that church that happens online and live, hybrid, as you might refer to it, is really important. And I think as we emerge, if that's the right word, out of the pandemic, having the courage to try and make that work for online and for in-person is really important in whatever the future is that the world looks like.
Thanks, Rach. Any questions for Andrew or Simon on the finance or the personnel side of things?
They clearly explained everything so well.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can say a big thank you.
We can
seriously,
say a big thank you.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely well deserved. Like we said, the transition that we've made and the progress that we've made during a pandemic is extraordinary. And what these guys have been able to do, and you know, Ian, Nigel as predecessors, etc., like what we've been able to do in navigating this has been really something else. And the fact that we are where we are as a church with the relatively small problems that we have, or good problems that we have, is a very blessed place to be.
Okay, so I think I'm going to draw us to a close now. Thank you very much, everybody. So it just remains for me to do two things. And firstly, I guess, beautifully, nicely set up there. Thank you. Moving on from that, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of the trustees, because there's a huge amount of time, thought, angst, prayer, weight of responsibility. There's a huge amount that goes into it. And just a massive thank you to all of the trustees, because it is an absolutely critical role. And yeah, I think it's just, thank you. Thank you for all your time. Thank you for what you do. And should you wish to join this band of illustrious trustees, as I mentioned earlier, we probably could do with a couple more trustees, particularly focused around anyone with experience in personnel, HR, environmental, would be really, really good. So I'd love to hear from you. Talk to one of the trustees, talk to one of the leaders on a Sunday morning, or get in touch. It doesn't sign you up for anything. We just have a conversation. You can join a meeting. You can try before you buy. So, but yeah, it would definitely be good to just bring some new voices in and get some new thoughts as well. So if that's something that might be on your heart, something you could pray about, then yeah, please do just let us know. So thank you very much. Really, really appreciate everyone who's ventured out tonight. Thank you for everyone who's joined online. Thank you for all the questions. It doesn't stop here. It is an annual general meeting, but what I would also love to say is if anyone goes home, oh, I wish I'd asked this, or why not? Like, we can talk about this stuff every day of the week. So yeah, please, if there's ever something on your mind in terms of a question, some feedback, some worries, please just make those known always. So yeah, thank you very much for joining tonight. Thank you online. Thank you so much to the tech guys as well for arranging this so that we could live stream tonight. So yeah, I'd just like to close us in prayer. Lord, I thank you for this incredible church and the awesome people within it who are being your hands and feet in this church and outside of these doors to try and encourage more people in. It is an absolute blessing that there are 90-odd people at the newcomers' lunch last week. Lord, we are here to serve. Reveal more of your gifts to us. Reveal your purpose, Lord, and help us to step into that. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you very much, everybody.